Hello friends, welcome to Premier UPSC IAS. So today we are going to start with the economy. Economy lectures will be started from today, and these lectures will cover almost all the parts of the syllabus of the UPSC pertaining to prelims, and especially the only important parts of uh, pertaining to examination will be covered in these lectures. Okay. Models of the economic systems. Introduction. Economics is the study of how societies use scarce resources to produce valuable commodities and distribute them among different people. Economics studies how individuals, firms, government, and other organizations within our society make choices and how these choices determine society's use of its resources. As per the definition, there are two key ideas in economics that goods are scarce and society must use its resources efficiently. The activities which involve profit, loss, livelihood, occupation, wage, employment, etc., are economic activities. The main challenge of an economy is to fulfill the needs of its population. As an economy moves up the ladder of development, the process of fulfilling the needs of the population becomes a never ending phenomenon. There are two aspects of the challenge that economies face. First, the availability of the goods and services required by the population, and the second, the presence of the supply network. Distribution network models. In the arena of distribution network, there are three historically existing models. One, state model, two, market model, and third, state market mixed model. State model states that is, government makes the sole responsibility of supplying the goods and services required by the population with no payments being done by the consumer. Examples, the former Soviet Union and the communist China. Market model. This model of distribution functions on the basis of the price mechanism. In this system, based on their demand and supply, goods and services are made available in the market. Their prices are determined in the open market, and finally, they get distributed to the population. This distribution system was prevalent in the capitalist economies like the whole Euro America. State market mix model. This mode of distribution is developed out of the experiences of the former two systems in the state market mix. This distribution system has certain goods and services which might be made available to the population freely or at the subsidized prices by the state, and some might be supplied by the market for which the consumers need to pay. As the socio-economic composition of the population of an economy changes, the mixture of the goods and services to be supplied by the state and the market get redefined in the economies from time to time. Depending upon the dominant view of the time, in a particular country, different forms of production patterns evolved and different economic systems finally came up, providing alternative ways of organizing an economy. The three models of the economic system, which evolved in the course of human history, are basically the different stages in the evolutionary process of the experiments to define a better way of organizing an economy. Let's discuss these three models of this evolutionary process in brief. 1. Capitalistic economy. The origin of the capitalistic form of the economy lies in the famous work of Adam Smith, Wealth of Nations, 1776. He resented and raised voice against the government regulation of commerce and industry of the time, which did not allow the economy to tap its full economic worth and reach the level of well-being. He stressed upon the division of labor and an environment of laissez-faire, non-interference by the governments. He also acknowledged the need for competition in the market for such an economy to function for public well-being. He proposed that a state of equilibrium to the economy and general well-being to the countrymen would be brought by the invisible hand of the market forces price mechanism. After the independence of the USA, the ideas of Adam Smith were made part of its public policy just 1 year after The Wealth of Nations was published. From here, the idea spread to other parts of the Euro America, and by 1800, the economic system capitalism was established. It was later known by different names: private enterprise system, free enterprise system, market economy, etc. The state has no role in making the economic decisions like what to produce, how much to produce, and at what price to sell, etc., and are taken by the market, by the private enterprises in the system. State economy. It is proposed by the German philosopher Karl Marx. More specifically, this kind of economic system first came up in the erstwhile USSR after the Bolshevik Revolution 1917 and got its ideal shape in the People's Republic of China in 1949. State economy model spread to other countries in Eastern Europe. There are two versions of the state economy: in erstwhile USSR, known as the socialist economy, and in pre-1985 China as the communist economy. While the socialist economy emphasized the collective ownership of the means of production, property, and assets, the socialist economy also ascribed a larger role to the state in running the economy. On the other hand, the communist economy advocated state ownership of all properties, including even labor, and absolute power to state in running the economy. Karl Marx opined that socialism was a transitional stage to communism. It never did happen in reality. Basically, socialist and communist models of economy emerged as a reaction to the prevalent popular economic system of capitalism and proposed just the opposite. In state economy, decisions related to supply and prices, production were all suggested to be taken by the state only. Such economies were also known as centrally planned economy, non-market economy, centralized economy. The socialist and the communist economies believed that capitalistic economies are based on exploitation and they criticized it. In response, the capitalist economies called them the practitioners of state capitalism, where the states were the sole exploitators. The communist and the anti communist propaganda resulted in serious intellectual discussions almost up to the mid 1980s. Mixed economy, the belief in the invisible hand of Adam Smith and the self correcting quality of the market got a major setback in the early 20th century during the Great Depression, 1929. The impact of the depression spread from the USA to the other economies of Western Europe. It actually escalated large scale unemployment, downfall in demand, and economic activities and lockouts in industrial enterprises. The prevailing Smithsonian macro ideas failed to check the crisis. Keynesian theory. George Maynard Keynes, the English economist at the Cambridge University, proposed a new approach through his famous work, The General Theory of Employment, Interest and Money, 1936. Keynes questioned the very principle of laissez-faire and the nature of the invisible hand. He even opined that the invisible hand brings equilibrium to the economy and by strangulating the poor. But by strangulating the poor, he suggested that prices and wages are not flexible enough to provide employment to all. Questioning the limitations of the market mechanism, Keynes suggested strong government intervention in the economy. To get the economy out of the depression, he suggested an increase in government expenditures, discretionary fiscal policy, fiscal deficit, lower interest rates, cheap money supply, etc., to boost the demand of goods and services, as this was the reason to behind the depression. As Keynesian policies were followed, the concerned economies were successfully pulled out of the Great Depression. Further, he suggested the capitalistic order to assimilate the goals of the socialistic economy, economic ideals of the socialist, that is, the ex USSR. As a follow-up to the Keynesian advice, many trend-setting economic policies were initiated throughout the capitalist economies. Specifically, very important initiative was the government's active role in the economy. Hence, the mixed economy arrived in this way, and the classical capitalistic economy was challenged by it. The world by the late 1980s was having neither a pure example of the capitalistic economy nor of a state economy. There were many states of the world that opted for a mixed economy in the post Second World War period after coming out of the colonial rule, such as India, Malaysia, Indonesia, etc., to name a few. World Development Report 1999. Moreover, the World Bank in the World Development Report 1999, titled Entering the 21st Century, went on to suggest that every country should determine the areas and the extent of the market and the state intervention depending upon its own stage of economic development, socio-political, and other historical factors. Hence, the long-standing ideological dilemma as to whether the market economy or the state economy was the better or the best way of organizing the economy was solved for all times to come. The document pinpointed good things of both the systems and concluded that they don't have the relationship of dichotomy but that of complementarity. The real answer seems going for neither state nor market, but a judicious mix or a combination of both. As the state market mix depends upon the political and the socio-economic conditions of an economy, there can never be a mechanical prototype of the mixed economy which could be applied upon every economy universally. Today, once the World Trade Organization has taken over the world economy, the brand of the mixed economy it advocates is more inclined towards the free market economy. However, it does not propagate to make the state an economic non-entity, that is, it leaves scope for greater state intervention in required areas if needed. Economic system of India. In India, the process of economic reform started in the year 1991. It was, in fact, the search for a new state market mix while India had been a mixed economy since independence. Since it was suggested that every economy needs to explore its own mixture of state and market, in the 21st century, according to its changed socio-political scenario, however, India opted for the mixed economy after its independence. At that time, the state market dilemma was at its peak in the world. In the process of organizing the economy, some basic and important infrastructural economic responsibilities were taken up by the state governments, center and state, whereas the rest of the economic activities were left to private enterprise, that is, the market. Many economic roles, which were under complete government monopolies, were now opened for participation by the private sector. Examples are many: telecommunication, power, roads, oil, and natural gas, etc. At the same time, the responsibilities which were till date being shouldered by the state alone and which could be taken up by the state only were given extra emphasis. In this category comes the whole social sector: education, healthcare, drinking water, sanitation, nutrition, social security, etc. The kind of state market mix for which India went was thought to be fit for the socio-economic and political conditions of the time. The economic system of India was a mixed economy in pre-1991 years and is it as it is in post-1991 years, but the composition of the state market mix has gone for a change. In the future, as the socio-economic and political factors will be changing, India will be redefining its mixed economy accordingly. Role of the state in an economy. Three role of the state. As we discuss the evolution of the model of the economic system, there comes out the important three possible roles for the state government in an economy. One, as a regulator of the economic system. Two, as a producer and or supplier of the private goods and services. Three, as a producer and or supplier of the public goods or the social goods. State as a regulator of the economic system. The state takes important economic decisions. The state announces the required kind of economic policies. The state takes the sole responsibility to get them implemented and controlled, and the state punishing those who don't oblige to those economic decisions. 2. State as a producer and or supplier of the private goods and services. And 3. State as a producer and or supplier of the public goods or the social goods. Role of state economy. The economy which selected both the roles, producer and or supplier of the private goods and services, as well as of the public goods for the state under monopoly, called the state economies. This category of the economy had two variants in the socialist economy. At least the labor was not owned and exploited by the state. Unlike the other, the communist economy, where labor used to be under complete state control, these economies had almost no markets. Role of capitalist and mixed economy. The economic system which left both the roles 2 and 3 as the sole responsibilities of the private sector was called the capitalistic economic system. Here, the state had almost no economic role but played a passive role of the regulator. So the state had almost no economic role but played a passive role of the regulator in the capitalist and mixed economies. Okay, mixed economies had at least kept one economic role fixed for them, that is three. While they played the sole role of supplying public goods to the needy people. In some of the mixed economies, the state went on to take some of the roles of supplying private goods, even by carrying heavy burdens of subsidies also. Three objectives. The World Development Report 1999 was a judgment on the possible and the suitable role of the state in the economy. It suggested a timely shuffling of states' role in the economy as per the socio-economic and political needs of the economy. since Keynes had announced the following three main factors such as economic efficiency, social justice, and individual liberty. These these were looked upon as the combination of the political problem of mankind needs to be solved by the defining role of the state in their economy. In the process of realizing the above mentioned three objectives, an economy cannot go for either allowing only the state's role in the economy or only the market's role in the economy. These challenges could only be faced properly once the state and the market both are given a balanced role in an economy. And this balance needs to be defined by its present direction and conditions of the future desire of the economy. Striking the right balance between the roles of the state and market in the economies came to be known as the process of economic reforms (LPG) in the post World Trade Organization world. If we analyze the need of an economy, we find some compulsory roles of the state in the economy, such as role of regulator. If the regulation and the control of an economy are left to the private individual or group, they will be as using the regulatory powers to maximize their profits and returns at the cost of others. So it looks more logical in the democratic political setups wherein the interest of the largest number is being represented in the regulatory provisions, not the sole producer or distributor of the private goods. The responsibility of producing and distributing private goods to the people could be well handled by the private sector as this is a profit fetching area. So the state should not be burden itself with this responsibility. But in the absence of the proper presentation of the private sector in an economy, many countries in the world gave this responsibility also to the state. India is one among them. But as the private sector became capable, this responsibility was given up by the state in favor of the private sector, and better development has been possible in those economies. Hence, the state can save its important human and economic resources, which should be transferred to take care of the production and distribution of public or social goods. In this sense, India delayed this process since 1991 in the comparison of the economies of the countries like Malaysia, Indonesia, Thailand, and South Korea, the sole producer or distributor of public goods. This responsibility cannot be left to the private sector as this is a loss making business. It means the state will have to take the sole responsibility or may need to expand its role in such areas as we see in the post reforms Indian economy. Three sectors of the economy. The economic activities are probably classified into three broad categories, which are known as three sectors of the economy. Primary sector. This sector includes all those economic activities where there is the direct use of natural resources as agriculture, forestry, fishing, fuels, metals, minerals, etc. In some of the economies, mining activities are considered as part of this secondary sector, though we see direct use of natural resources here. Broadly, in some economies, agriculture sector is considered as the primary sector. This is the case in India. Secondary sector. This sector is rightly called the manufacturing sector, which uses the produce of the primary sector as its raw materials. Since the manufacturing is done by the industries, this sector is also called the industrial sector, automobiles, textiles, etc. Tertiary sector. This sector includes all those economic activities where different services are produced, such as education, banking, insurance, transportation, tourism, etc. This sector is popularly known as service sector. Three types of economy. Factors of categorization. The categorization of economies depends upon the following factors, such as the shares of the particular sectors in the total production of an economy and the ratio of the dependent population on them for their livelihood. There are three main categories of the economies as follows. One, agrarian economy. Two, industrial economy. Three, service economy. One, agrarian economy. An economy is called agrarian if the share of its primary sector is 50% or more in the total output, the GDP of the economy. India was an agrarian economy at the time of independence. In the present context, it exhibits the typical symptom of service economy, with the primary sector's contribution falling to almost 18% of its total production, while almost 60% of its population depends on the primary sector for its livelihood. Thus, in monetary terms, India is no more an agrarian economy. However, the dependency ratio makes it an agrarian itself. Industrial economy. If the secondary sector contributes to 50% or more to the total production value of an economy, it is an industrial economy. Higher the contribution, higher is the level of industrialization. The Western economies who went for early industrialization, earning faster income and developing early, were known as developed countries. Most of these economies have crossed this phase once the process of industrialization saturated. For example, USA, Canada, UK, Switzerland, etc. Service economy. The economy whose 50% or more produce value comes from the tertiary sector is known as a service economy. The first lot of such economies in the world were the early industrialized economies. The tertiary sector provides a livelihood to the largest number of people in such economies. In the Indian economy, in the last decade, 2007 to 8 to 2016 to 17, has increasingly come from the services sector, whose contribution to the overall growth of the economy has been around 54 to 55%. Stages of the growth. By the end of the 19th century, it was a well established fact, at least in the Western world, that industrial activities were a faster way to earn income in comparison to agrarian activities. The Second World War had established this fact for the whole world, and almost every country started their preparation for the process of industrialization. As country after country successfully industrialized, a pattern of the population shift from one to another sector was established, which was known as the stages of the growth of an economy. With the intensification of industrialization, dependency on primary sector for livelihood decreased and dependency on secondary sector increased consistently. Similarly, such economies saw a population shift from the secondary to the tertiary sector, and these were known as the post-industrial societies or the service societies. Almost the whole Euro-America falls under this category, as these economies are having over 50% of their total production value being contributed by their tertiary sectors, and over half of the population depends on the sector for their livelihoods. Many other countries which started industrialization in the post-war period did show aberrations in this shift of the population and the income. India is one among them. Growth, development, and the value of happiness. Introduction. In economics, the term progress was used for a long time to show the positive movement in the lives of people and in an economy. It had both quantitative and qualitative aspects to it. After a point of time, some economists started using all the three terms, progress, growth, and development, interchangeably to mean almost the same thing. But it was only during the 1960s, 1970s, and 1980s that a clear meaning of these terms were really evolved. The term progress became a general term with no specific meaning in economics or denoting both growth and development. But growth and development were allotted their clear cut meanings. Economic growth. Economic growth is a widely used term in economics, which is useful in national level economics analysis, policy making, and the study of comparative economics. An increase in economic variables over a period of time is known as economic growth. The most important aspect of growth is its quantifiability, that is, one can measure it in absolute terms. All the units of the measurement may apply it, depending upon the economic variable where growth is being studied. For example, an economy might have been able to see growth in food production during a decade, which could be measured in tons. Similarly, the value of the total production of an economy might be measured in currency terms, which means the economy is growing. Therefore, it can be said that economic growth is the quantitative progress. Though growth is a value neutral term, that is, it might be positive or negative for an economy for a specified period, we generally use it in a positive sense. If economists say an economy is growing, it means the economy is having a positive growth. Otherwise, they use the term negative growth, growth rate. Similarly, the growth or rate of an economy can be calculated for any given successive periods. To calculate the growth rate of an economic variable, the difference between the concerned period is converted into a percentage form. The growth rate is an annual concept which may be used otherwise with a clear reference to the period for which it is used. Economic development. It was believed that once an economy is able to increase its production, its income will also increase, and there will be an automatic betterment, quality increase in the lives of the people of the economy. There was no conscious discussion over the issue of quality expansion in the lives of the people. Economic growth was considered as a cause and effect for the betterment of the lives of the people. This was the reason why economists, till the 1950s, failed to distinguish between growth and development, though they knew the difference between these terms. It was during the 1960s and in the later decades that economists came across many countries where the growth was comparatively higher, but the quality of life was comparatively low. For economists, development indicates the quality of life in the economy, which might be seen in accordance with the availability of many variables, such as the level of nutrition, the expansion and reach of healthcare facilities, hospitals, medicines, safe drinking water, vaccination, sanitation, etc., the level of education, other variables on which the quality of life depends. Growth versus development. Here, one basic thing must be noticed that if the masses are to be guaranteed with the basic minimum level of quality enhancing inputs in their life, a minimum level of income has to be guaranteed for them. As income is generated from productive activities, it means that before assuring development, we need to assure growth. In other words, higher economic development requires higher economic growth. But it does not mean that the higher economic growth automatically brings in higher economic development. Thus, we may have some diverse cases of growth and development. Higher growth and higher development, higher growth but lower development, lower growth and but higher development. Without a conscious public policy, development has not been possible anywhere in the world. Similarly, we can say that without growth, there cannot be development either. The first such instance of growth without development which the economists saw was in the Gulf countries. We can say that economic development is quantitative as well as qualitative progress in an economy. It means when we use the term growth, we mean quantitative progress. And when we use the term development, we mean quantitative as well as qualitative progress. If economic growth is suitably used for development, it comes back to accelerate the growth and ultimately greater and greater population brought under the arena of development. Thus, there is a circular relationship between the growth and development. Measurement of development. Once the concept of the welfare state got established, development became a matter of high concern for the governments of the world, policymakers, and economists alike. The idea of developing a formula method to measure the development was basically facing two kinds of difficulties, such as one, at one level, it was difficult to define as to what constitutes development. Factors which could show development might be many. It has been a really difficult task to achieve consensus among the experts on these determinants of development. At the second level, it looked highly difficult to quantify a concept as development constitutes quantitative as well as qualitative aspects. It is easy to compare qualitative aspects such as happiness, satisfaction, beauty, taste, etc. But to measure them, there is not any measurable scale. Human Development Index. The dilemma of measuring the developmental level of economies was solved once the United Nations Development Programme (UNDP) published its first Human Development Report (HDR) in 1990. The report had a Human Development Index, which was the first attempt to define and measure the level of the development of economies. The first such team which developed the Human Development Index was led by Mehboob Haq and Inge Kao. The term human development is a corollary of development in the index. The Human Development Report measures development by combining the following three indicators: health, education, and standard of living. The Human Development Index sets a minimum and a maximum for each dimension called goalposts and then shows where each country stands in relation to these goalposts. These are expressed as a value between 0 and 1. The three indicators used to develop the composite index are as given below. The health component is measured by the life expectancy at the birth component of the HDI. It is calculated using the minimum value of 20 years and maximum value of 83.57 years. Two, the education component of the HDI is now, since SDR 2010, measured by two other indicators: mean years of schooling for adults aged 25 years, expected years of schooling for children of school entering age, capped at 18 years. The standard of living component is measured by GNI, gross national income per capita at purchasing power parity in US dollars, PPP dollar. The UNDP ranked the economies in accordance with their achievements on the above given three parameters on the scale of 1. As per their achievements, the countries were broadly classified into three categories with a range of points on the index. High human development countries, 0.800 to 100 points. Medium human development countries, 0.500 to 0.799 points. And low human development countries, 0.000 to 0.499 points. What is missing in HDI? Basically, the Human Development Index could be considered as one possible way of measuring development, which was evolved with the maximum degree of consensus. But the index which calculates the development of economies on certain parameters might be overlooking many other important factors which affect the development of an economy and standard of living. As per experts, such other determinants affecting our living conditions might be cultural aspects of the economy, outlook towards aesthetics and purity of the environment, aspects related to the rule and administration in the economy, people's idea of happiness and prestige, ethical dimension of human life, etc. Happiness. Happiness is a broader thing than development. The so called development for which the world has been striving hard for the last many decades is only capable of delivering material happiness to mankind. Happiness has its non material side also. It means while the world has been trying to maximize its prospects of development, there is material happiness, it could not attend the non material part of the happiness. The non material part of our life is rooted in ethics, religion, spiritualism, and cultural values. As development or human development was defined in material terms, it could only deliver us material happiness which is visibly available in the developed world. Due to the partial definition of development, the developed world has been able to achieve development, that is, happiness, but only of the material kind. For the non material part of the happiness, it needs to redefine the ideas of development. Gross national happiness. Bhutan, a small Himalayan kingdom and an economic non-entity, developed a new concept of assessing development in the early 1970s, the gross national happiness. Without rejecting the idea of human development propounded by the UNDP, the kingdom has been officially following the target set by the gross national happiness since 1972. In fact, Bhutan has been famously adopted the goal of gross national happiness rather than the gross national product. It has the following parameters to attain happiness or development, such as higher real per capita income, good governance, environmental protection, cultural promotion. According to Bhutan's concept, the last one, that is, cultural promotion, is the inculcation of ethical and spiritual values in life. It says, without it, progress may become a curse rather than a blessing. Gross national happiness and human development index. At the level of real per capita income, the gross national happiness and the human development index are the same. It means the basic difference between the GNH and the HTI looks at the level of assimilating the ethical and the spiritual aspects into the idea of the development of the UNDP. What is the actual objective of an economy? Development or happiness? Search for a happier life for humanity has been the ultimate aim of not only saints, seers, and philosophers, but of economists too. The whole gamut of the economics literature on progress, growth, and development is ultimately aimed at bringing more happiness into the lives of human beings. A time also came when many scholars and world leaders raised the ultimate question: are we happier today? And in the wake of this increased scrutiny around the world, there came the UN resolution of 2011, which invited member countries to measure the happiness of their people and to use this to help guide their public policies. This was followed in April 2012 by the first UN high level meeting on happiness and well being, chaired by the Prime Minister of Bhutan. At the same time, the first World Happiness Report was published. It was followed some months later by the OECD guidelines setting an international standard for the measurement of well-being. World Happiness Report. Happiness is an aspiration of every human being and can also be a measure of social progress. The key to proper measurement must begin with the meaning of the word happiness. As per the World Happiness Report 2013, the problem, of course, is that happiness is used at least in two ways: as an emotion, were you happy yesterday? And as an evaluation, are you happy with your life as a whole? For example, a very poor person might report himself to be happy emotionally at a specific time, while also reporting a much lower sense of happiness with life as a whole. It may be concluded that there is now a rising worldwide demand that policy be more closely aligned with what really matters to people as they themselves characterize their lives. In the past few years, more and more world leaders have been talking about the importance of well being as a guide for their nations and the world. The World Happiness Reports are being published in support of these efforts to bring the study of happiness into public awareness and public policy since 2012. Takeaway from the first World Happiness Report: 21st century, an age of stark contradictions. While on the one hand, the world enjoys the technologies of unimaginable sophistication, on the other hand, at least 1 billion people are living without enough to eat. The world economy is propelled to soaring new heights of productivity through ongoing technological and organizational advances, yet it is relentlessly destroying the natural environment in the process. 21st century, an age of stark contradictions. Countries achieve great progress in economic development as conventionally measured, yet along the way, countries succumb to a new crisis of obesity, smoking, diabetes, depression, and other ills of modern life. Poor are victim of lifestyle of rich. Not surprisingly, the poor report a rising satisfaction with their lives as their meager incomes increase. On the opposite end of the income spectrum, for most individuals in the high income world, the basic deprivations have been vanquished. Most importantly, the lifestyles of the rich imperil the survival of the poor. Human induced climate change is already hitting the poorest regions and claiming lives and livelihoods. It is telling that in much of the rich world, affluent populations are so separated from the poor that there is little recognition of the adverse spillovers or externalities from their own behavior. Higher income does not ensure higher happiness. There is a clear limit on the extent to which the rich countries can become happier through the simple device of economic growth. In fact, there are still other general reasons to doubt the formula of ever rising GNP per person as the route to happiness. While higher income may raise the happiness to some extent, the quest for higher income may actually reduce one's happiness. The thinking of becoming happier by becoming richer is challenged by the law of diminishing marginal utility of income. After a certain point, the gains are very small. Another problem is the creation of new material wants through the incessant advertising of products using powerful imagery and other means of persuasion. What needs to be done? Material life must be harnessed to promote the end of suffering, social justice, and attainment of happiness. Why has development not delivered happiness to the developed world? The answer to this question does not lie in any one objective fact, but touches so many areas of human life. First, whenever the economists from the outside talked about the progress, they meant overall happiness of human life. Questions still need to be answered. Should the world pursue GNP? Should we crave for higher personal income? Should our government spend even a tiny fraction of their GDP spent on advertising each year to help individuals and families? Should we consider some parts of our society to be off bounds? But after the end of poverty, what comes next? What are the pathways to well being? What will guide humanity in the Anthropocene? What is the path to happiness?